Hello and welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us on LinkedIn Live today. My name is Hank Lee and I'm a marketing manager here at SystemSoft Technologies. In our last episode, we discussed deployment, adoption, and governance of teams with some great insights on the importance of building a solid strategy in each case. In this episode, we're continuing the Future of Work series and discussing applications and customizations of teams. As a reminder, during the event today, if you have a question for our experts, you can add it to the comment section below. And when you're ready to talk to our experts, please visit our website and use the form to contact us for a more technical discussion with our solution architects. And we are very happy to have our resident expert here today. We have Whitney Church, who is our modern workplace solutions architect. Hi, Whitney.
Hi.
Hey, it's great to have you back for part 2 of the Future of Work series.
Good to be back.
Thanks for joining us. Can you tell our audience today what you do here at SystemSoft?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been with SystemSoft since the beginning of the year. Been focused on the modern workplace, but I've been really focused on collaboration solutions, work from home, all those sort of digital best practices in architecture for over 15 years now. And I had the opportunity to work directly with Microsoft. So I got kind of an insight to the early days of SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams, and have managed to stay on the cutting edge of that technology.
Well, we are really happy to have you here today. And just remember, folks, as we go through some questions that I have for Whitney, we do want to hear from the audience. So let us know if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to stop and answer your questions as we go along. To get started today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the current situation and what is driving this digital transformation around teams and around remote worker. So deploying teams is part of that overall push for digital transformation. And I wanted to share a few of the recent trends with the audience as we kind of set this topic up. So the last 10 to 15 years, we all know that there's been definitely a shift in remote work for non-self-employed workers. There's a growth that is expected to continue as more organizations seek to retain talent by offering the remote and the hybrid work environment. And some interesting statistics that I found regarding this: by 2022, 70% of organizations will have accelerated their use of digital technologies, and 65% of global GDP was becoming digitized. 6.8 trillion in direct digital transformation investments from 2020 to 2023. So as you can see from these trends, this is a very, very growing and active marketplace for digital transformation. So let's jump in and talk about some of the things that organizations are doing. Whitney, can you talk about how organizations are optimizing and consolidating their team's environment for digital transformation?
So people are beginning to progress with their digital transformation after being kind of thrust into it rather rudely last year without maybe sometimes able to properly plan for it, even though that had been coming down the pipeline for about half a decade. So as they're working with this mobile and hybrid environment, we're seeing more and more opportunities to consolidate and optimize business processes, programs, any files. There are a lot of different things that we're used to having as an organization on premise that is able to be optimized and moved to the cloud. And one thing that's really important to know is, like, when it comes to consolidation and customization, it's not exactly the same sort of customization that some people are looking at, like when you're looking at a website and trying to change colors and add graphics. We're really talking about customizing it to fit your organization's unique needs and your unique users. So we want to be able to implement and integrate programs, be able to recreate any processes that are manual or maybe a little bit vintage, and definitely start taking a look at ways that we can reduce your company's technical debt, which means processes or programs that are costing your company money, and whether it comes to licensing or upkeep, and be able to move those into more modern and best practices processes and programs.
So a lot of that really comes back to that point about planning and having a strategy in the beginning, so that you can really understand which of those processes, which of licenses, what legacy programs you want to keep, which ones you want to move forward with, right? And I know that there are a lot of challenges that companies are facing as they think about how to integrate business apps and how to customize these environments. You know, there's things like budget constraints. There's the relationship with IT, right? The business partnership with IT is a really important aspect to keep in mind. time and resources is always a big concern, and that's what we're really trying to improve, is make these tools easier to use. But along with that, you also have to worry about security and compliance, right?
Absolutely.
So, like you said, what we're trying to do is maybe eliminate any kind of shadow IT, try to understand, how to leverage existing technology while also thinking about potentially rolling out or moving on from legacy systems and moving into a more modern environment. So when we think about those business processes, so is enabling apps for business processes, is that the recommendation we have for teams?
Absolutely. Kind of creating that one-stop shop is always, or one source of truth is always a best practice when it comes to technology. And taking a look at your environment and looking at those processes holistically and seeing if there's any place to streamline or improve it by using any of those Teams apps.
Right. And I think now is a good time to really help the audience understand what we're talking about. Can you give us a definition of Teams apps?
Certainly. There's a couple of different categories. One of them is an actual app, one thing that you get in the Microsoft Store that is a ready-made and packaged program that integrates seamlessly into Teams. There are a myriad of these apps, and so having a good plan around which ones you want to support, which ones you want to enable for your team is a really good idea. Then there's the other ones where we're getting a little bit more customized, where we're taking a look at your processes and we're creating that utilizing best practices in Microsoft technologies, such as Power Apps, SharePoint, or Forms, and making sure that that's all married into the same environment.
Yeah, and so as companies are trying to decide what to do and they're building their strategy, so what questions should organizations be asking when they're deciding to build apps or to create customizations? What are the questions that are really important to ask up front?
Totally. When it comes to the technology side of it, we are working to make it as like the integration as easy as possible. So start thinking about it from a business perspective. Do these processes, is there a real problem? What is your problem statement? And then what is the outcome? How are you going to measure whether or not that solution is going to solve the problem that you just defined? And of course, who's going to be using it?
Right. We talked about this in our last episode that, adoption and usage is really important to understand ahead of time, because, taking an app that's really popular and then replacing it with something new isn't always the best course of action, correct?
Right. And sometimes popular is just the way that people have gotten used to doing their work. And it's change management, and people don't really like for things to be moved around. So it's pushing that evangelism forward, saying, look, this is what's going to happen. Here's why it's going to happen. Here's how it's better. And here's how you get the help so that you've got a seamless day. And we're not interrupting you with new technology. We're rather enhancing your work.
Right. And I think that's really the goal. And that's why it's important to have that planning up front. And ultimately, companies are really interested in how it's going to improve the business outcomes. Can you talk about that a bit?
So business outcomes can be measured in a bunch of different ways, whether it comes to your resource management. Are you able to shave some hours off of people's day by streamlining one of their processes? Or are you able to replace an old technology that is taking too much time for IT to be able to manage, and is taking too much money for the licenses, and is going to be sunset at some point anyway? So there's a lot of different outcomes. Most of them come to time and money.
Yeah, that's something we all are keeping an eye on. So, okay, we've set the stage now, right? We understand what apps are. We understand what trends are. We know what the current situation looks like, feels like. So let's start talking about where this is happening and where's the movement really going right now. Are there any industries that are moving faster to integrate apps and customizations into their teams' environments?
Oh, absolutely. During last year, we saw a big uptick, especially in healthcare and in education, because that was a different measurable business outcome for them. Not necessarily time and money, but rather enablement, being actually able to go out and help people be able to connect with their patients, patients being able to get help from their practitioners, students being able to access online learning and being able to get access to teachers. And then also in retail, retail had to change the way that they collaborate on all of their solutions and be able to get their go-to-market strategies ready without that in-office environment.
Yeah, it's changed the landscape of how we do everyday business. And also one other aspect that I'm hearing a lot about that companies are really struggling with is in hiring and retaining talent. So I know in the human resources and talent acquisition areas, um, having opportunity for remote work or hybrid work environment, it's becoming one of the big points for hiring and retaining new talent.
Yeah, HR is one of the earliest adopters, that section. So whether it's a vertical or whether it's a part of a company, has been one of the biggest adopters of this collaboration because they're all about people.
Right, right. So when we think about some of those common apps like Office 365 or some of the more common applications, what are some of the other non-Microsoft apps that companies are implementing?
There are definitely some industry leader apps that have already been enabled for Teams. Trello, Salesforce, WebEx meetings, which kind of gives you kind of that double trouble when it comes to the availability to meet with your people. And then Adobe Creative Cloud has created an integration point for Teams, which is very powerful because everybody knows Adobe Creative Cloud is an industry leader and is a best practice when it comes to any of those marketing materials, all of that sort of suite of Adobe products.
I think when I was looking into this, there's over 400 partner applications, so there's really pretty wide variety of possibilities, right? And the thing that makes the future of work and that makes the team environment so interesting is that it really does consistently meet the needs of a variety of different teams. Every team's a little bit unique. There's a variety of apps that they need and tools they need for productivity. So with that hub that we have with Teams, it allows you to customize and extend the workspace with third-party apps, right? And also across devices, which is really important because you need to be able to work out in the front line as well as the office worker. And when you think about getting started, it could be just as simple as bringing together some of those office apps, right? And reducing context switching, creating conversations around content, making it easier for teams to collaborate with each other. So there is a lot of possibilities when it comes to the apps you choose, and again, that comes back to your governance plan and how you want to plan out your strategy. So now let's talk a little bit about customization. Can you talk about what's possible when customizing environments and teams?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, we're not talking about taking the program and changing with the navigation from the left to the right, adding graphics, adding colors. We're really talking about taking a look at your organization and taking a look at any paper processes that we can possibly streamline and centralize, anything that we can possibly deprecate from an old or antiquated system, anything that's currently not available to your team unless they're physically in the office. There's a lot of those pieces that are customized because it's custom to your unique organization. And so when we're creating those customizations in Teams, we're talking about finding either the right app for you or creating the right application interface for you to make sure that you're getting the most out of your environment.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's really important to understand. And we do have a question coming in from our audience. And one of the things I think people are curious about is how do we measure improvement in employee engagement after moving to Teams, right? Are there any tips for companies to measure the value and the improvement that you might see when you start moving over to Teams?
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons why we as an organization always continually talk about planning, governance planning, and putting together that strategy. Adoption and change management, there are actually specific roles in companies these days around making sure that people are leveraging technology and getting the education that they need in order to properly manage that change management. And when you have a good communications plan, a good rollout plan, you have metrics that you already plan on measuring up against once that rollout has happened, and you have check-in points for that so that you can say 500 users moved over at this time and we've got 30% adoption based off of usability. There are a lot of different metrics and it depends on what your organization needs in order to tell the story.
Well, that's a good point because it might be as simple as looking at maintenance hours for IT, right? Time spent on software updates,
Yep.
legacy apps, that are running native rather than in the cloud.
Or deprecating 3 SQL 2010 servers and being able to recover all of that money that's spent on licensing, patching, and access.
So I think it's really taking a look at all those environmental processes and then also organizationally, what departments benefit in terms of time and productivity based on not having to do work like they did in the past.
Yeah.
So lots of companies are working on this right now, right? That's why people are here listening to us today. So, but can you talk a little bit about how organizations are consolidating programs and their service offerings?
It brings us back to that planning. People are starting to take a look at their digital workspace holistically. So we've got 3 different file shares, but we have this license available for OneDrive and for Teams where we can be hosting our files and they're accessible and we don't have to spend the same things in backups. There are a lot of different integration points and a lot of different problem statements that people are beginning to address and to document and start developing that roadmap of what it's going to take to modernize their service offerings.
And as we talked about earlier, right, the Team Store has over 400 partner applications and integrations available just today, right? And that's going to continue to grow. So let's keep going on this topic, right? Let's keep talking about customization. Can you give an example of a best practice customization that not only optimizes your teams, but it also reduces your technical debt, as we talked about earlier?
Sure. First off, just starting with the App Store, with all of those over 400 partner applications, it is absolutely crucial from a governance standpoint to go into your admin panel and decide which one of these programs that you want to enable for your users. Because if you enable it and they start using it, at some point you're going to have to support it. So taking a look at that is going to see where you've got maybe a Salesforce on-prem, and maybe there's a way to either create a hybrid environment or whether or not you want to optimize for the cloud. It's a good chance to take a look at all of your tools, all of your processes, and best practices, like anything that's not modern, anything that requires constant updates or constant maintenance, anything that's not going to be in compliance or that's being sunset. Take a look at all of those, document them, and start deciding what that future state looks like.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And Whitney, we do have another question coming in from our audience. Thank you for that. It looks like we have a question from Michael Piotrowski. What are the best integrations for collaboration?
Well, Teams by itself is fundamentally a collaboration portal. So it's going to be a matter of what your organization needs more. Do they need chat more? Do they need to be able to share files? Do they need to be able to share files externally? Do they need multiple meeting interfaces? Do they have ways, do they need to record meetings and make those available for someone else? How do they publish content and how do they work on the content before it's published, and what does that process look like? So it's really a matter of what your team needs for collaboration, because HR department is going to need a very different collaboration than IT is going to need, like an IT support staff.
So I can imagine within a company, you might have various integrations depending on the business unit and their particular business processes.
Yep, it's one of the reasons why Teams has multiple channels. Everyone doesn't have to work the exact same way, but at least they're all in one place, that it's in one manageable environment.
That's a really great point. Thank you. And we have a couple more questions coming in. So when we think about the application and customization features in Teams, what are some of the limitations? And specifically, how does that impact pricing or multi-user access points?
So one of the limitations I would start off with is that whether or not you're going to have to share this between organizations. So your domain is your domain when it comes to Teams, and there are possible integration points for companies that are outside of your organization, but there are limitations around that too, especially when it comes to being able to record your chats, because that saves up into the cloud when it's just within your organization, or whether it comes from sharing any sort of secured documents. So there are different configuration points to take into consideration there, and some of the key limitations about sharing across the world.
And there would be an impact on pricing in those situations, depending on what level of access is required.
So no, once you have access to Teams, you have access to Teams, and you can enable that to allow for outside organizations. It's their interaction with that is going to be limited. And so if that is not enough, depending on what your needs are, there may be additional costs required for either a workaround solution or a custom solution.
Okay, thank you. And there's another question coming in. We thank our audience for those questions. What is conversational ticketing for Teams?
Conversational.
Are you aware of that?
Are you talking about AI?
That's a good question. I'm just, we got a question coming in from Michael. Maybe Michael can clarify what he's looking for there. Might have caught us a little bit off guard on that one.
Yeah, because if we're looking for an AI interface, that is something that Microsoft is continuing to work on. It's not that robust yet, but there are a lot of different AI integrations, from custom ones to other bots out there that you can enable in some of these. So that is definitely a deeper topic than what we're going to cover today.
Yeah, and again, we want you to be able to reach out to us and connect with us on these more technical conversations. And we're happy to have those conversations moving forward. So for companies just getting started with Teams, what are some of the best practices to consider?
Definitely comes back to that planning. Plan for your implementation, plan for your roadmap of what the future is going to look like. Put together that rock solid governance plan so that you know what you can support and that business knows exactly what they're committing to. And it's all about communication, communication, communication.
Yeah, I agree. And I think those are all really great points. We really do appreciate you being here today and answering all our questions and giving us all your great insights today. Before we close out today, can you just summarize some of the key takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. Start off analyzing those business processes and environment. Take a look at your business, the way that you're getting work done, and the way that you're interfacing with technology holistically. Make sure you've got a plan for the future, a plan to manage it, a rock solid governance plan, and take a look at anything that's going to be your technical debt, anything you can deprecate where you can either get back time or money.
Yeah, thank you for that so much. And for our audience here today, and for anyone having questions that we weren't able to get to, and wishing to have a more technical discussion with us, just remember you can learn more, and you can visit our landing page at Digital Workplace Solutions. There's a contact form there. We'd love to talk to you. And then, lastly, before we close out today, Whitney, how can SystemSoft help?
Oh, we can help with any of the bullet points that I just mentioned. We are a holistic consulting company. We can help you from your process analysis all the way through implementation to support. We are absolutely here to make your life an easier place to be.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And we want to thank our audience today for joining us today. Keep a lookout on our LinkedIn Live channel for future events coming up. And we really thank you for joining us today. Have a great day, everybody.